What's up, guys? Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over a college football recap and reaction. This one's going to be over Penn State and Minnesota. This is a huge game for both of these teams. Of course, for Penn State, you need to keep your college football playoff hopes alive. And it would not be easy for them going into Minneapolis to play the Minnesota Gophers. They're ranked 17th coming into this game. And it is crazy because Minnesota ended up pulling off the upset 31-26. They won this one, and they improved to 9-0 on the season. Meanwhile, Penn State falls to 8-1. This was a huge win for Minnesota, and we're going to go over why this was a huge win for them here in this video. But a few key points. Minnesota once again pulls major upset. Almost perfect day for Minnesota quarterback Tanner Morgan. And I mean, as you can see, his stats were absolutely outstanding. 18 for 20, 339 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's almost a flawless day for a quarterback. He only had 2 incompletions. That was really the only fault that he ever had today. And so that is huge for this Minnesota team. Running back wise for Minnesota, they had Rodney Smith. He led them 18 attempts, 51 yards, no touchdowns. And then Rashad Bateman had a huge day for Minnesota at receiver. He had 7 receptions, 203 yards. He accounted for almost half of Minnesota's yards overall. And he also had 1 touchdown to go along with that. Total yards wise for Minnesota, 460 total, 121 rushing, and 339 passing. Time of possession wise, they dominated with 35 minutes. Penn State, on the other hand, for stats, Sean Clifford had a tough day, 23 for 43. Didn't have a flawless day, or not even near to it, compared to how Tanner Morgan performed. But yeah, once again, 23 for 43, 340 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 interceptions. Journey Brown led Penn State in rushing yards, 14 attempts for 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. And KJ Hamler led in the receiving game, 7 receptions, 119 yards, no touchdowns. Yardage-wise, Penn State led Minnesota. They beat them 518 to 460. But a good reason why Penn State is probably higher in yardage is because Sean Clifford committed 3 of this team's turnovers with 3 interceptions. And of course, 2 of them, I believe, were in Minnesota territory. So you cannot do that. That is, if you're going to win a game, you cannot throw 3 interceptions, especially in the crucial times as it was. I know Sean Clifford, he threw an interception in the most crucial part of the game at the end when they were driving down the field, right around, I think he was inside the 25. He throws an interception there, and that's your game right there. But yeah, once again, I think Sean Clifford is much better than that. He's always done, or he's had ups and downs all season long, but this was obviously a game that he really needed to perform well in, and it didn't really happen. But yeah, once again, Minnesota, though, they came to play today. Their defense, both defenses didn't look very good today, but Minnesota was able to pull it off and hold Penn State off until the very end, and also to force 3 interceptions. That is excellent for Minnesota's defense. That is exactly what they needed. A couple more key points, many more yards than points. Usually you'll see, with 500 offensive yards for Penn State, you'd expect more than 26 points overall, and that is crazy. Usually with 500 yards, you could expect 30, 40, possibly even 50 points. And of course, once again, the turnovers could have a big impact on that. But yeah, there were many more yards in this game than there were points. Once again, major passing game. Both of these teams had very high passing yards. I think Minnesota, I know both teams were in the 300s, the mid 300s. So yeah, something to note there. Penn State never led in this game. They did tie, but they never actually led. Something to note there as well. College football playoff impacts for Penn State. Now that you've taken a loss to a team like Minnesota, Minnesota isn't bad by any means, but for college football playoff wise for Penn State, this loss takes a major hit. This makes them take a major hit. I think, their Big Ten championship chances are really diminished at this point. Ohio State's just trucking along. It's going to be tough. Penn State needed to go undefeated the next couple weeks to be able to face Ohio State as a 10-0 versus a 10-0 team. But I don't think that's going to happen anymore. It won't happen. But yeah, Penn State really needed that game to be able to possibly force a win. And then that would bring Penn State possibly into the Big Ten championship and possibly into the college football playoff picture if they were to win that championship game. But I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Minnesota is who we need to be talking about for the championships now. As they get this huge win here, of course, the Big Ten West is still wide open. You got Wisconsin and Iowa still in the race for that. And then Wisconsin and Iowa are actually playing today as well, so that's an interesting game there. Yeah, this is huge for the Big Ten West. I think Minnesota could very well end up going on to win it. I mean, this is the second year in a row we've seen a surprise team make the championship game. Of course, Northwestern it was last year, and it's Minnesota this year, possibly. I mean, we haven't gotten to that point yet, but it's looking like Minnesota could very well go on to the Big Ten championship game. But then again, Minnesota still has to play Iowa and Wisconsin in their schedule, so you got to watch out for that as well. Could Minnesota get to the playoff? It is very, very possible. If they can go undefeated in the regular season, which is, once again, still very possible, if you can get through Iowa and Wisconsin. I mean, it is very possible, but you do have to win that Big Ten championship game. You do have to beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game if you're going to get anywhere. How far will Minnesota go now? In my opinion, I think Minnesota is going to end up going to the Big Ten championship game. I think this win right here proved to me that Minnesota is a team that's for real. And I mean, we've seen that over the last 4 or 5 weeks, that Minnesota's steadily increased in production on offense, especially. They've been blowing out opponents. This is a much different team right now than what we saw at the beginning of the season in their first 3 games, where they played their non-conference opponents pretty close. This is a very different Minnesota team, and I think this team is definitely for real at this point. I don't think they'll end up winning the Big Ten championship game by any means, but they could very well end up going to the Rose Bowl. That would be crazy if Minnesota went to the Rose Bowl, but I think it is definitely possible. If Ohio State ends up going to the playoff, that puts Minnesota in the Rose Bowl. So, yeah, that would be absolutely crazy. But yeah, up next for both of these teams, Minnesota goes to Iowa, who is currently 6-2 before this Wisconsin game. And then Penn State plays Indiana at home. They're 7-2. So I mean, that Indiana game, that could be a little bit sneaky. You got to watch out if you're Penn State. I mean, Indiana's been playing pretty well. But same for Iowa, though. Going on the road, that's a very tough environment. We usually see, or we have seen, some pretty major upsets in Kinnick Stadium before. So you got to watch out for that. But thanks for watching once again. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this game in the comments below. Do you think Penn State deserved this? Do you think Minnesota is a college football playoff contender? You let me know in the comments below. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Thank you guys all for watching once again, and stay tuned for more from All Sports Central.